I'm Jeff Baker, and I'm here on behalf of the Demystify Academy to discuss a possible future of web development. In the past, we had very typical setups, very well established now, typically something like a LAMP, as in Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP, or a Microsoft equivalent. They've been pretty standard, and we know all the languages and alike. The present is in somewhat of a turmoil, I feel, and I keep getting asked questions by people that I meet in the industry about just what does the future hold for web development. Which languages should they learn, and where should they be investing their time and their effort in case of people skills, both learning and recruiting, and also in terms of infrastructure. Where do they spend their money? And we're at a transition point, I feel. I don't think it's as strong as a crossroads. We've not hit a point where we cannot go forwards. But we are certainly at a position of extreme change. I'm also here to put forward some suggestions, proposals, thoughts on what the future might actually hold for web developers and for industry and companies who use web technology, which is probably pretty much the majority these days. It's fair to say that typical small, medium-sized web project was, as I've said, LAMP, something similar. We probably used HTML, CSS, JavaScript front end. Java applets were a bit of a disaster, and I haven't seen one of them for a long time. And for back-end stuff, PHP, Perl, Ruby, Ruby and Rails, and of course good old Java, which used in conjunction with Tomcat, Glassfish, Pyre, Jakarta and so on. That's all, yeah, sure, we all know that. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt. But we're at the dawn of a new era. Things inevitably move on. ISPs are providing shared servers. The server virtualization, VM, cloud technology, a rapid growth in the increase of use of SaaS, PaaS and IaaS. Never worked out how to say that one. But IaaS. They're all there. They've been around. All of these things have been around for a while. Just sitting there. And people sort of dabbling with them, but not really full-scale committing. So PHP was a very, very popular option. It's easy to learn, easy to deploy, with various optimizers and help from other performance-enhancing things that you could get pretty decent performance. The downside for commercial projects is if you want code distribution. If you want to distribute it, you're distributing your source code. There's no real anything there technology-wise to give you copyright protection. WordPress is a fantastic tool used and developed in PHP. I believe many of the big projects, such as Facebook and various other big ones, I'm not sure exactly which ones, but I know quite a few of them are, were all developed in PHP. In the case of WordPress, they're happy to share their code, and the only copyright really are warnings in the code. In the case of things like the other platforms, the PHP all stays very firmly on the server side and the public doesn't get access to it, so they have less of a copyright worry or concern. But it is nonetheless one of the downsides if you're developing commercial code in PHP. It's a real consideration. Java, it's fair to say, when it was in its infancies, it was somewhat lacking, and it did come under a lot of criticism. some of it a little unfair, most of it wasn't. There was a time where you thought, particularly moving from C++ type backgrounds, you thought, great, Java, looks interesting, I want to do this. No, you can't do that. But it was like, okay, well, I need to do this. No, you can't do that. But it's matured now. And pretty much anything along the lines of everyday code development, Java can do and does very well. Another criticism of Java was about its startup overhead and its use of JIT technology, or just-in-time technology. It's improved, well, million times over from when it first started, to the point where it's not only used in Java now, but many other environments use just-in-time technology. Same's also true for bytecode. That came under a lot of flack in the early days, but now it's being used a heck of a lot, and it's on the increase, particularly with new web development, and when we start looking at the way web apps or applications now, which would have been considered programs, are now being deployed. Bytecode is a fundamental part of that. It's excellent language, Java, and it's a mature language, as I said. Lots of support, huge. Well, for younger audience these days, everything is massive. Code base, infrastructure, support mechanism, knowledge base, skill base, it's all there. But I think its days are now possibly coming to a close in small and medium size, certainly, web development. ISPs are no longer providing app servers, which Java do need. They're pretty much a thing of the past now, mainly because of all the increase in VM and shared servers, and the app servers sadly have not kept up with that technology, and Tomcat and the like just don't play well on shared stuff. So it's a shame, because it is still an excellent choice of language, but well, whilst Java itself is not a dead or dying language by any means whatsoever, in the case of web, it's certainly going to feel the squeeze. So we've got a new kid on the block. Python. It's been around for quite a long while. It was designed, I believe the original designer, I don't remember his name, came up with the language to teach his kids how to program, and it is in fact absolutely fantastic as that. Many of us will remember the days of BASIC. Again, a great educational learning language. Python seems to be following a very similar path to BASIC, actually. It's now, along with R, the main language that is taught at schools, universities, colleges around the world, which means it will, at some point, have a substantial skill base. It's become trendy, and when things become trendy, and particularly when people are young and enthusiastic with not a lot of experience, the enthusiasm can exaggerate a hell of a lot of claims, and their lack of experience also means that they can believe it's the best thing since sliced bread, but without actually having worked on huge or large scale projects, they don't realise there's some fundamental flaws in the design of Python. But then Python wasn't designed to be used as a main production, commercial, stable, robust language. It was designed to teach kids how to code. Don't forget that. But on the other hand, it's what the next generation are learning. So it will be here for a while, with all of its pitfalls. It does have many strengths. Its simplicity is probably the biggest one. You don't need to learn very much at all about programming, computing, or IT in general, and you can be very competent and deliver some good results with little effort and little knowledge. It's going to be around for a while, and in actual fact, as school leavers, university leavers, graduates, whatever you want to give them, title you want to give them, that is going to be moving in to mainstream. So it's there. SAS, PaaS, IaaS, probably any of us who's been around for a while, we've had dabblings with SAS. Some of us will have written full-blown SAS applications. Many of us would have written things which are kind of sort of following that idea, but a full SAS was over the top for what was necessary. But platform as a service and information as a service, their rapid growth, they weren't talked about very much for a long time, but now they are. And yeah, I'm talking to the likes of Oracle, and yeah, that is a major part of their strategy and their roadmap into the future. And also, as if you're following cloud development technology, all of this is supporting cloud, and cloud is going to be around for a while, and it's going to grow. There is no sign of it slowing down. There are no sign really of any viable alternative. Grid computing came and went, got a bad rep, mainly because a lot of people said a lot of things which weren't true. People tried it and realised that it couldn't do half the things people promised. There we go. Great idea. Never really managed to make it work. I've worked on a couple of grid projects, and yeah, they were problematic for many reasons. So what's happening now? LAMP or equivalent, it will live on for a while, but the writing, let's be fair, is on the wall. The use of containers such as Docker, Kubernetes is on the up. Thankfully, object-oriented should be safe for a while. I certainly hope so. If the data encapsulation, privacy, all of that is an absolute godsend. And for those of us who started in assembler and worked our way up through the layers of languages and procedural and all the other top-down design, bottom-up design and every other paradigm that's been around, OO does address many of the headaches that we suffered and endured in the past. One thing that is curious though is with the proliferation of object-oriented OO databases, there was a lot of buzz for a short time, and then it quietened down and it sort of disappeared. Before making this little presentation, I did some research on OODBs, and I think there's Mongo, I think DB, that's around, but it's not. You look at the major ones, and they're still very much staying with the relational model. So that opens up another whole raft of questions of how do you store objects in a database, particularly when you think about hierarchy, inheritance, encapsulation. Could store them as a blob. Blobs are not an elegant way of holding those things. Can't search inside a blob. Fraught with problems. It'll be interesting to see what happens on that. Something probably will happen, especially with all the clustering of DBs and clustering of servers, and there's got to be a way to do it. But then I'll come back to this when I talk about a possible future. Application in browser, and some of the apps now which are actually being in browser are incredible, and they're being deployed in browser. It got almost, well, we are almost heading towards a day where you don't download God knows how many gig or meg of an install image, installing app on each computer. It's all becoming centralized. We are moving that way, which means the app is deployed to browser. There's a lot of technology being developed in that, and to some extent with a lot of success, and that's definitely one to keep an eye on and to bear in mind, which comes back to OO, modularization, encapsulation, and so on, so on, so on, so on. Anybody thought C++ was dead and dying? Dead and buried even? Not at all. In fact, you couldn't be more wrong. It lives on and is a fundamental part of gaming. Could you imagine rendering some of those very high resolution images and animating them that they use in games? Could you imagine doing that in any other language? I'd love to see you do it in an interpreted language. You'd press a button on your controller and it'll take, whoa, hours for everything to catch up. Of course, the downside of C++, when you compile it down, it compiles to pure native. It does actually technically go through an intermediate stream called object code, but you can't run that. So there is that downside of C++, but if you want access to the real hardware pretty much without restriction, that's what you've got to do. You want to do anything fancy with hardware, and let's face it, there's a lot of very fancy hardware out there. If you really want to use it to its true potential, you've got to get right down there. You can't have all these nice high-level languages and 4GL languages and so on, 4G languages. You know, they'll obscure the hardware. They'll abstract it, which is what makes them nice and easy. But it also means you can't use it. Something to think about. So, Typescript, or Typescript, or whatever the heck you want to call it. Been around for a while. Long time. Loads of hype, went quiet. Some more hype, went quiet. But it is increasingly being adopted. And for those who do overcome the pain of using it, rarely return back to the old ways that they used. I don't know if it's partly a case of they suffered, so now they've suffered, they're going to actually use the stuff no matter what, out of pure determination. I don't know what the reason. This is probably one of the few times that people who develop Java Enterprise Beans can actually sit back and say, ha ha ha, you used to make fun of us, now look at what you're writing. Hey, there you go. There's a quote from Microsoft press release, which I've included in there. Whilst it's not grammatically correct, it does kind of communicate something. But one thing to note about NPM, and the writing should be on the wall about this, and be aware of it. Elm and various other DigitalOcean and various other ones are basically saying, be warned, with this distributed automatic preloading installing packages, it is a matter of time before a virus gets distributed, and when it hits, it will hit big time. Everyone is warning us. Just because it hasn't happened by no means it won't, and anyone in the know says it will. It's not if, it's when. And I think that will shake that community up quite a lot when that day does actually arrive. Now, there's so much JavaScript out there, it's going to be here for a very long time. It's safe. And compiled JavaScript is improving performance absolutely no end. Elm is a good alternative language, it's a good alternative to developing in raw or old native JavaScript, but there are lots of options if you're going to move away. And again, I did some research to make sure I was up to date on this last night, and now it's almost a case of we're saturated or overflowing with options without any clear one leader. So if you're thinking from a commercial point of view, or from a developer's point of view, it's, well, which one do I learn? Yeah, there are some that are out there that were the absolute flavour of the month, must have. not heard of anymore, gone. So I'd say JavaScript itself, nice and mature now, settled, stable. It'll be here for a long time. But there are other options out there. Could be we're suffering from too many options. So what will the future be? Will we be looking at a day? Python, TypeScript, Docker, Passenger, Django, Oracle, MySQL. Oracle have developed some fantastic components, which I really hope they do develop lightweight versions of for use in smaller projects. I've been looking quite a lot at Oracle product range and their roadmap, and also I've contacted Oracle and are talking to some of their people there about their plans for the future and possible options and possible paths that they're going, and they're fully committed to IaaS and platform as a service. I just hope that they do make some of their good ideas available to the smaller users and not just the corporates at an affordable price. Cost kicks in quite dramatically when you start looking at that kind of thing. I'm not in any way sponsored by Oracle. I don't work for them. I never have worked for them. I've worked on projects which have used their technology, but that's the extent. So my opinion is just based on experience of using their products and also contacting them to ask them questions. Fully cloud, almost certainly we're heading that direction. The small data center, their days are, shall we say, numbered. I don't see how the small data center or medium-sized data center will be able to cope with clustering and fully distributed cloud computing. They just won't have the finances to be able to put that infrastructure in place. Look at Amazon Web Services. Look at Google Cloud Computing. Yeah, could someone, say the likes of Data Center, compete with that? They're going to need a hell of a lot of capital to put behind it. I would say we're probably looking at now accepting that the servers and the platforms will be supplied by a handful of the real big players. Whether you like it or not, they're probably the only people that have got the money to be able to do that, realistically. So I thank you for your time. I hope you found this useful, and I hope it's given you some food for thought. The only real certainty now is web development is moving into a new era. I know everyone was talking about Web 2.0 a few years ago. I don't hear anyone talking about that anymore. I think it's something that sort of happened, did happen, maybe not, but no one's talking about it anymore. Maybe it's just there and we've stopped talking about it. But the point is, it's moving, and it's at a point where there are now so many options. Nobody can say there is a clear path as to how things are going to evolve. Only that they are. Thanks very much. Hope you enjoyed it. Goodbye for now.